Well, it's a good thing I put the wipers up, because, you know, that makes it much better. It is wintertime, people. Wintertime. You know what that means? Time to look ridiculous. It's really cold out here, but I feel pretty good about it because I was at the dollar store and I found this device, this head warming device that had a label on it that said fashion hat. That's correct. This is a fashion hat. I think this was made in a country where they don't have winter, you see. So they got the pattern and we're like, oh, we're supposed to make a bunch of these hats. And they're looking at the thing going, this has no functional purpose, so it must be strictly for fashion. I believe this is also a fashion hat. Not sure what the fashion is. I feel like you put something like this on the right person and it just instantly becomes like fashionable. I think people are fashionable, not attire. Yeah. Anyways, one of my favorite things to do in the wintertime besides, you know, celebrate the coming of Santa Claus is to wish that I was someplace much sunnier, or conversely to simply go someplace much sunnier. Speaking of fashion, I think I'm just going to spray this and call it good. Here's my Christmas tree. That's one reasonably redemptive part of this season. Pun intended. Anyway, the point is I took a trip to San Diego and you should all feel jealous, and so I'm going to help you with that right now. So I'm in the Toronto airport, trying to get to San Diego. It's a little lonely. Last time I had a good friend with me, although he was on a skateboard and kept riding away. When I was growing up, we used to call them a banana board and nobody wanted them. They were the lame ones. Now apparently the cool kids have them and they're called a penny board. But anyway, I'm very sad that he's not with me. My flight has been delayed, then revised delayed later, then revised delayed back earlier. So I should probably go check in case it goes back to being on time because I don't want to miss my flight. Anyways, when I get to San Diego, I'm going to be checking into an extremely fancy hotel where there's going to be a big conference with several thousands of people, and I get to present a paper at this conference. And I know what you're thinking. Wow, Amber's is going to present a paper for several thousands of people. No, I'm not. Probably at my session, which was like an extra session that they invented to accommodate a whole bunch of papers that came in that they didn't want to put in any of the existing sessions. So probably it's going to be like 5 people, and they're all the people presenting the papers. But nevertheless, we should have some good conversations. I'm presenting a paper that I wrote a while ago. I'm looking at sort of the corporate identity of Israel in the Old Testament, how it is that their experience or access to or whatever the presence of God affects or shapes or, you know, characterizes their identity. I'm always about the presence, okay? So you're going to discover in the course of watching very many of my videos that I'm always looking at divine presence. It's like, that's my obsession. And then I'm looking at that kind of biblical theology and bringing it into conversation with, in the discussions of ecclesiology, which is a really fancy theological term that means you should feel intimidated when I use these big fancy words. Okay, not really. What it means is people were talking about the church, and then somebody was like, what are you guys talking about? And they were like, ecclesiology. So basically it means, what do we think about the church? What is the church? Is there such a thing as the church? If there is, how do you decide what it is? Who's in it? Who's not in it? Etc., etc. Anyway, so you have these discussions about ecclesiology. I'm trying to shed some light on how Christians could think about what it means to be the church in light of what the Bible tells us it meant for Israel to be the people of God in the Old Testament. So, the voice on the speaker just said, ladies and gentlemen, if you're waiting for a seat, just please have a seat. Well, I've made it to Minneapolis, one of the biggest airports. I'm still in Concourse C. I'm trying to make my way to Concourse F, Terminal 1. I hope there's not more than one terminal. I don't even know which terminal I'm in. One thing I like about this airport is that it has carpets absolutely everywhere. It kind of makes you feel like you're like at home, like you want to take your shoes off, because, you know, we're in the north. Minnesota, state of nice. What's nice about it? The icy cold winters, the ridiculously humongous airport. There's a giant Christmas tree here though, check this out. 'Tis the season. How good. Oh, this is interesting. The walkway has 2 halves on it. I'm walking on the side that says stand. Pretty soon I'm going to stand on the side that says walk. Okay, I think I finally found Concourse F.
It is a very nerve-wracking center.
Yeah, it is a nerve-wracking center. I'm very nerve-wracked. You hear that? They're playing beautiful classical music. Like we're all supposed to be getting nice and calm. Well, here we are, sunny San Diego. I'm here for the Evangelical Theological Society, which is an evangelical conference that takes place where all the bigwigs and the grand poobahs and the people that wrote all the books that we had to read during our theological education, they all show up here and present papers, and we all chat about them and talk and ask questions and test out each other's ideas and so on and so forth. I presented a paper on Wednesday morning, and so that was a good experience. I had some good questions, and people asked for a copy of the paper, which was nice. It wasn't so nice when 4 people got up out right in the middle and just left after like 10 minutes into the paper, but oh. That is some sunny San Diego sun. Look at that, eh? Got a pretty nice washout happening here. Whew. It's like literally palm trees here. It's like I'm getting ready for the triumphal entry. It's kind of the wrong season. But I don't suppose they have white Christmases down here in San Diego. Anyway, it's a cool city. It's a cool place to be. It's a cool environment to come and hear all these scholars and think about all this stuff. But whenever I come to these things, I'm always kind of like reminded of the kind of expectation that this education that I'm doing, this PhD in Bible and theology, is somehow supposed to turn into like a job, right? Because so many of these people are professors on faculties at different universities. Many of them have kind of like made it in their careers, and yet the reality is those kind of jobs are just like shrinking, disappearing. Faculties are getting smaller. Many seminaries and stuff are not offering tenure track positions anymore. They're doing adjunct or other forms of contract work, etc., etc., etc. The world has changed and is changing for the kind of career that I feel like I'm going into. It's just not actually all that certain what exactly the outcome is going to be. All right, so here I am with Josh Walker. That's your last name, right? Walker?
Yeah, that's right. You got it right. We just ran into each other at the Evangelical Theological Society's annual meeting.
So that's one of the reasons why we come to these things, because we like to bump into old colleagues. So Josh actually was the teaching assistant in a course I took on Pauline epistles. And we had many an argument about whether or not N.T. Wright is a valid scholar, but nevertheless.
I never said he wasn't a valid scholar.
No, that's true, but you did say that I'd probably pray to Mary if N.T. Wright told me to do it, so.
Did I say that? Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah, and maybe back then I would have. I've developed a more critical sort of evaluative skill since then. But so what was your favorite paper, I guess?
Oh man, my favorite one so far probably would have been one on Anselm and his views on creation.
I thought you were a New Testament scholar.
I am, but I'm currently teaching philosophy at Grand Canyon University, so I went to visit some papers on philosophy, and Anselm's one of my favorite philosophers.
Okay, well you gotta get work wherever you can get it, I guess,
right? Yep. The job market today is hard for us, so yeah, the humanities are dying. Yeah, the humanity.
It suddenly occurs to me that we've got a justice problem in the church, and that justice problem is that if you happen to have a calling, and if in conjunction with having that calling you happen to have the cash, you can pay anywhere from $1,000 to $2,000 per course and go to some fancy school and learn about stuff from people who are experts, who are well trained, who are proficient in these things, who are reputable in the field, who have written books, etc., etc., etc. So that's what I'm doing. I spend $15 grand a year. Well, I don't. The government does. But the point is, for $15 grand a year, I can learn from some of the best people in the industry, so to speak. And so that's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. But there's a certain group of people in all of our churches who, in virtue of their identity and status and financial situation, are simply not able to access that kind of level of biblical education, produced and instructed by a competent and responsible and trained and gifted and called person. And that group of people that I'm referring to are children. You know, I sort of thought the polka dotted bow tie with the variable striped shirt was a bit of a bold choice. Speaking of bow ties, I gotta make a shout out to this local outfit. Not this outfit. This is a good outfit and probably deserves a shout out. But I wanna make a shout out to this outfit, this wonderful little local artisanal, what do you call it? It's called One More Thing, and they make these bow ties. It's like an artisanal textile craft. Okay, it's my wife. But the point is, you should definitely buy your bow ties from One More Thing. I just was thinking, I don't think there's any children's ministry that has PhDs ministering in it. Maybe that's a problem. Maybe that's a problem. Jesus said the kingdom belongs to such as these. If we believe that getting a PhD, pursuing this kind of a calling, to be an educator of the church, which is what I believe my calling is, if we believe that all of that is contributing to the kingdom work of, ministry, what what God is doing in the world, what he needs in his church so that his church can continue to be equipped. If we really believe that, then the people who we should focus the most effort and energy on are the children. And that's not a particularly new thing to say, and so most churches, of course, make children a high priority and will hire a children's pastor full-time, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But I actually had an experience in my undergrad where somebody that I was studying with who was hired as a children's pastor before she even began her theological education. When she began her theological education, was actually kind of admonished by her church for doing so because they felt it was taking away from her time and energy that she could be investing in the children's ministry. It seemed to be their opinion that she didn't need a theological education in order to, read Bible stories to kids. Something's wrong with that. Something is wrong with that.
I am shocked and chagrined. Mortified and stupefied.
If the highest value that you can get from somebody in terms of biblical education is to be able to study with somebody that has that kind of training, then why do our kids not have access to that? There's so few jobs in the academy, and I was just talking to this friend of mine. I was like, look, you know what? The academy either doesn't want us or doesn't have room for us. What we have to offer in that context does not have sufficient value to result in the kind of participation that we want to have. To me, it just seems like even if it doesn't translate into a high-paying job, I have to use this. All of this work and effort and energy, which we have pursued specifically in connection with a calling that God has placed in our lives and said, you got to get this education in order to do what it is that I have called you to do. I have to use this. And if the need is there among our children and youth, then maybe it's time we turn the paradigm on its head and say these children and youth deserve access to high quality, highly trained experts who are reputable, credible, responsible, and competent to provide the kind of biblical education that we want people in our churches to come into adulthood having sort of under their belt. Anyway, so I don't know, what do you think about that? We need more PhDs in children's ministry. That's the that's the main idea. I actually have a new plan. I'm gonna get all the PhDs that can't find work in the academy, and we're gonna basically start a children's ministry and say, if the academy don't want us, the kids are getting PhD quality education. What do you think about that?
I think that's fantastic. Let's do it.
Why shouldn't they get some PhDs helping them out?
It's a good idea, but here's the fundamental question. Who's going to pay for it?
Well, I don't know. Jesus said, don't take any money in your belt when you go out into ministry, so.
Okay, so we're gonna step out in faith.
I guess. I don't know.
If I tell my wife that, she's going to be very wondering where dinner's going to come from, though.
Get ready, folks, because it's time that our kids learned about the Bible more than what they just get on a Sunday morning. I'm not knocking our kids' program at all. I mean, we have a great kids program, and they use high-quality curriculum, and they've got dedicated volunteers that deliver it. But I don't know if that's enough. I don't know if that's enough, because we need people that are built up into full maturity, and we don't want them to wait till they're retired to have time to do it. So let's get them while they're young. That's what I say.
There is an H in it.
I have been getting plenty of looks. Plenty of looks. This guy's walking by over here with a big JBL wireless speaker. It's like, back in the day, you used to have the ghetto blaster. Still going, still going. Technology's just gotten better. Okay, here comes this guy in a fancy suit. He's got probably looks like a camel skin briefcase. Coming right out of the Morgan Stanley building. There he goes. That's the people with the money right there. It's a fashion hack.